conversation, I do want to begin by reading from the Gospel of John, chapter 21. It is found on page 116 in the New Testament. John writes this. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and to go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten the belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. And after this he said to him, "Follow me." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
These are our mugs, just in case you don't want to after church. In the months leading up to Galen's retirement next week, we had this idea that a lot of people would probably be wondering about Galen, about his history, about what happened during these 26 years of his ministry here at Irvington, but also what happened prior to life in Irvington. And we thought, instead of having a lot of different people ask these kind of questions, what if Galen and I just had a conversation about these questions and were able to fill in some of these mysterious gaps in Galen's life. He's such a man of mystery. And so we thought, let's just have a little conversation between us. And so this is just between you and me, Galen.
Okay.
All right?
I can turn this off.
Let's start prior to seminary. When you were a young man, was there anything else you considered doing besides going to seminary?
When I went to college, my idea was that I would go into the Foreign Service work at the State Department after college. While I was in college, that kind of changed, and, well, not kind of changed, it changed rather radically. And I remember having a conversation with my advisor, who was in the history department at the time, and because I was a history major. And I asked him, where do people go when they're looking for presidents of small liberal arts church-related schools? Because I was at a Presbyterian college. And in those days, which was back when they built log cabins, my advisor said, well, usually they look for someone who has a degree in theology, ministry, because it's a church-related school, and then that they follow that up with a degree in education. So I thought, well, that really sounds, something like I'd like to pursue. And I talked, I don't know how many people, how interesting it is, that's now kind of one of the fields that one of our sons is in. And that's kind of what I thought about until the decision came to me that maybe college administration really wasn't the best place, and that church ministry of some kind would be. Although I fought that for years. I fought church ministry. I especially fought a traditional church ministry for years, kind of like Jonah. Just didn't want to do it. I kept wanting to find some other niche, some place that better fit me, but fit within the church structure. That would be a journey that would last probably through seminary in another 10, 15 years.
But you finally decided to enter Czech.
I did.
What was it that made you decide on that?
Well, I think I told the story before about my experience in the Czech Republic. When I was a junior in college, I spent a year studying in Europe and didn't quite know where to go over Christmas time, so I wrote to my dad about what I should do for Christmas. And he suggested I visit a seminary classmate of his who was the head of the Evangelical Church of the Czech Brethren, which would be the Reform equivalent in what was then Czechoslovakia. And he would be in a position of our state clerk of the General Assembly. He was the top administrative person. And you know, I have to digress for a minute for a bit of history. This was 1969. I believe it was a year earlier that the Russians had come into Czechoslovakia and taken it over. And so entering the country of Czechoslovakia was a matter of going through a lot of checkpoints with people with machine guns, which was really not a very comfortable thing to do as this guy from a Chicago suburb. I had experienced some machine guns before. When I got there, you know, I really kind of understood what the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer had been like, as he made some very difficult choices. My dad always referred to this man as Beaver. I have no idea why he called him that. That was never told to me. But he was this humongous Czech man, as most Czech men can be. And because of restrictions on religion that was brought in by the communists, he was forbidden to shop in certain stores, and one of the stores he was forbidden to shop in was certain grocery stores. So as we ate Christmas dinner, I kept biting down on something crunchy. And I was told that I was eating quail, that Beaver had gone out and shot with his gun so we could have food on the table. Later in that stay, he took me on a trip. He had to do trips on Sundays to visit different churches. He took me to it's a small church out in the country in a town called Melnik. And I'm in the Czech Republic. I don't speak a word of Czech. And I'm listening to this guy do his worship service. And all of a sudden he stops and starts speaking in German. And what he says in German is that he wants to welcome this friend of Dr. Care's to their congregation, and how glad he is that I can be here to spend some time with them as a guest from America. And I stood up and politely nodded and thanked him. And on the way back, Dr. Care turned to me and said, Galen, I want you to know how important that welcome was to you. And I said, why? And he said, that was the first time that minister has spoken German in this congregation has heard it since the end of World War II. And that was such a moving event to me that at that point there was just no question that I was going to go to seminary. But since it was the 60s, or 70s rather, and life being what it was, I decided that I didn't want to go to McCormick, although it's a good seminary, that is in good hands, because my father and my uncle had gone there, and there were still a lot of my dad's and my uncle's friends on the faculty around. So I decided that I would apply to one seminary, to Union in New York City, and if I got in, I would come to the conclusion that that was God's plan, that was what was meant to be for me. And lo and behold, that's what happened.
All right. That was what, early 60s?
No, that...
Just asking what everyone's thinking.
I went to seminary in 1971.
Oh, okay.
But you have to put that also, this is really kind of interesting, that some of you who are movie buffs and remember your history may watch the old police drama, Serpico, which concludes with the NAP hearings, which were a hearing set up by the city of New York to investigate police corruption. Those hearings were taking place when I went to seminary. So it was not a bad environment that I went to New York. In 71.
Early 70s was quite a time, I would think.
Yes.
Did you have long hair then? Were you part of that?
I did. I was talking to people this morning who were asking me if I was going to grow a ponytail when I retired. And I said, no. I've done my long hair and my facial hair experience, and it didn't work. And so I am done.
All right, so you went to seminary, graduated from seminary. What's your first call out of seminary?
Well, let me back up. I'll do what I did while I was in seminary. Can I do that? My first job in seminary, I had two jobs in seminary. One I got credit for is called field study, and one that I was required to do because it was my clinical pastoral education. I don't know if Lois here, but that's what she's doing right now. My clinical pastoral education was training as to be a hospital chaplain, which was something that really intrigued me at that point in my life. And so I spent 2 afternoons a week working at Bellevue Hospital in New York City, which is kind of the equivalent of the Cook County of New York City. Quite an experience, again, for a guy from a suburb of Chicago to be working in Bellevue Hospital. You'll still hear it referred to as all the places where the old movies where the tragedies of the world are kind of unfolded in the lives of the people. But I also worked at a place up in Tarrytown, New York, about a 40-minute train ride up the Hudson River in Westchester County at the Methodist Church of Tarrytown, New York. I worked for a guy who I always remember by the name of Jack Workman. Jack was a guy who, he never really wrote a sermon. He would go into his office real early in the morning and on Sunday and do his exegesis, his Bible study. And then he would picture in 3 chairs in front of him 3 members of the congregation. And he would tell them, those 3 people, what that scripture meant to them. He had it in his brain that I should start a youth coffee house back in the days of coffee houses. We're again talking in the early 70s. And so I did that. I started a coffee house every Friday night. It turned out to be a disaster, absolute disaster. It was not something that I was gifted at doing. But I, being young and stupid, I decided that when he got some funds from the State Narcotics Agency, that I would try to run a summer coffee house program. Well, that turned out to be an even greater disaster. I got accused by the city fathers of all kinds of things that I wasn't doing, and they came and asked me what kind of drugs I was on and all kinds of things. So I went back my senior year thinking, maybe youth ministry just isn't my cup of tea. So the second year, I worked in a church in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, the Union Church of Bay Ridge. And I was just fascinated by their system in that they had 2 buildings a block apart. One of them was their education building, and the other one was their worship center. And what was fascinating about their system, besides moving to one church and another, they completely shut down for 3 months every summer. Everybody on staff got a 3 months vacation. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. This is what ministry is like, and this is really cool. But once again, I did youth ministry and CE because that was kind of a typical thing, and that's what I needed to pay my bills. After seminary, I received a call to Trinity Presbyterian Church in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. At that point, it was the largest Presbyterian church in the state. And by the way, it is now closed, having gone through some terrible urban renewal problems. But my main job there, this is a heads up for the youth up in the balcony. My first job was to write a 36-week confirmation class, which all of the junior high kids had to go through. And we met every Wednesday night for class and study, for some games, and for a meal that was prepared by one of the parents and one of the families. Now, that meant every Wednesday night of the school year, we met to go through this curriculum that I wrote. And I guess you all can be thankful that I finally threw that out a couple of weeks ago. That was the main part of the job in Milwaukee. Although that was the time in my ministry, it was in a lot of ways the most creative. I published a couple of articles and some books and wrote a couple of plays, one of them we've done here. Again, kind of wanting to step out of the youth ministry area a little bit. And after a significant staff change that hadn't gone very well, Sue and I thought that, small town, rural farming life might be kind of interesting. And so I took a call to be the solo pastor of a church in Illinois. on Route 24 in the middle of corn and hog raising land. There were more people in my high school than in the zip code, so it was small. The major job and accomplishment there, I got my deacon while I was at that church, but I also had to tidy up some very difficult and unethical finances that were taking place. And because of those two things, it was such a difficult journey for that congregation. After 5 years there, it became time to leave. And that's when I got this phone call from Frances Leckie, who called me in the church office about 2 weeks before my graduation from Farmington Union. And she was the first person to ever refer to me as Dr. Schwartz.
So, she was obviously calling from Irvington.
Yes, she was.
Did you know much about Irvington? And talk about, your visits down here and why you accepted a call here, what attracted you to Irvington?
Well, first off, I need to say that, when the people in this call process for both churches and clergy, it's really a sales pitch. I'm trying to present myself in the best way that I can, and the nominating committee is certainly trying to present the church in the best way that they can. So, what was the question again? Senior moment, I'm entitled now. What attracted me? What attracted me? Well, two things. It was a fabulous committee. They were really nice. They were fun to be with. I loved the old church architecture when they showed it to me. And there had been what I call a divine mistake that had been made in the process. When Sue and I left Milwaukee, we were not able to sell our house in Milwaukee. And so for the 5 years we were in Illinois, we carried this house. And I knew that if I went to another congregation, we weren't going to be able to afford 2 houses. So I was only looking at churches that had a manse. The other thing that had happened is in my deacon work, I had read a book by Lyle Scheller, who was still a church guru at the time, who had said that what the church really needs is people who are willing to commit themselves to full-time associate work and not see it as a quick exit or a stepping stone to something else, something bigger. So here was an associate position that Lyle Scheller had thought that I could do, and I thought I could do that. And here's this church that has a manse, and so I'll talk to them. So this was basically a pastoral care position. Back then, there were 60 members of the Board of Deacons, which is a huge Board of Deacons. And there was at that time, some of you will remember this parish plan that we had, where we had the congregation divided up into little different family neighborhoods. And basically, the job was to take care of the deacons, to run the parish plan, and take care of the hospitals, the nursing homes. So it was basically a pastoral care position. So after we had talked for a while, and we were kind of getting close to coming to a conclusion, I remember saying to the committee at one meeting, well, now that we've come this far, don't you think it's time that we had to look at the manse? And there was this dead silence. And I don't know who said it, but one of the committee members said, we don't have a manse. And I just said, oh, because this had not been something I had expected at all. But we both were fairly committed to the process, to making this thing work out by the time that came out. And so through the kindness of Howard Whitworth and the hard work that he did, he was able to do some work with us and some other, so that we were able to afford a house when to come. It turned out to be one of probably the second best decisions that I've ever made.
Yeah, and just so people know, we have 2 members from the search committee who are here today, Jim Little and Jim Sonfrank, if you can wave your hands.
Yay! Since it was basically pastoral and senior ministry, the other 4 members have all passed away.
So, 26 years here at the church. How has your role changed over those 26 26 years?
Subtly, but significantly. When I came, some of you will remember, there was a third minister here by the name of Vince Alec. And the way the staff was set up was that the senior pastor at the time was supposed to run the shift, take care of the administrating, do the preaching, and make sure the staff did things they were supposed to do. Vince was in charge of evangelism and mission and all the young members, and I was in charge of pastoral care, and was supposed to be out of my office every day by 11 o'clock in the morning. Vince left about 2 or 3 years later to take a call in Australia. And at that point, the nominating committee decided not to rehire another minister. And so the work of mission became my job. And I may come back to that because that's really kind of changed a lot over the years that I've been here. And then when the last senior minister left, I was given the job of the trustees. So I kind of moved from pastoral care to mission to building and grounds, so to speak. But thank you, good Lord, I was able to avoid that ministry that I didn't think I had anything for. We come back to mission, so we come back to that. Okay, so do that. When I took over mission, it would have been in about maybe 92 or 93. I mean this in all fairness, the mission committee's kind of understanding of mission was who shall we fund. There wasn't very much hands-on mission taking place. And we got lucky in a way because, sadly lucky, because a number of the places that we had been funding for years started to run into some financial difficulties, not in terms of them being able to raise money, but what they were doing with the money after they got it. So we had to stop funding them, which caused us to search for new agencies. And also, we got a significant gift from one of the members of our congregation. I vividly remember a meeting with the mission team at that time of saying, well, what can we do with this money? And it was kind of a turning point because I didn't want them to just give the money away, which had been the habit. But at that point, the Furlings were down in Texas working as office managers for this organization called Faith Ministry. And we had heard a little bit about that, and we talked about that. Somebody said, this is what they do. They go down to Mexico to build houses, and it costs about the amount of money that we were given. And I just said, you guys could do that. And they decided they would do it. And so that's how that ministry began, and that mission began. And that kind of has blossomed into a lot of other hands-on ministry. We were small in numbers at going to Westminster at that time for the Christmas baskets. Didn't have a whole lot of involvement beyond the Christmas basket there. We had nothing going on at School 57 back then. So all that kind of evolved over the years since the mid-90s.
So, 26 years, there's lots and lots of events, funerals, weddings, plays, fish fries. What are some of the things over those 26 years that specifically stick out?
Well, I guess the first thing that sticks out would be the Mexico mission trip. It's become kind of part of the personality life of the church. And I think it really sticks out in my mind more than just the fact that we go, the church goes there. It's the first time that we went, that I went, I should be personal. There's only one first time. And every time that people have gone since then, they have heard the stories and they can have some expectation of what would happen. And those people, there were 12 or 13 of us that went the first time. We had no idea what was going to happen. I think that was extremely special and significant for the original mission people. The second thing would be what's now the ICANN office, which started at about the same time, about 97 around there. We had struggled for quite a while with what to do with our aid to people who come in the door and ask for assistance. We were concerned about managing our funds wisely, and we knew there were two obstacles. One is that we had terrible records among the churches of who we were helping, and two, it always seemed to be that someone would come at the most inopportune time. And it took me a year or so to figure out that that's just the way that system works. And so we didn't really have time to do the kind of research that we needed to do to verify the information that we were given. So we wanted some centrally located place that would have enough time to do that. And so originally we formed an alliance with what was then called MAM, I believe, Metropolitan Advocacy Ministry. It was located, I think, at St. Thomas Catholic Church. And they provided a person at Emerson Avenue Baptist, which became the beginning of the ICANN office. And it was then supported by the Ministerial Association. And there were years of extreme lean financial health there. Barely making ends meet to get by, to provide our assistance and pay what we paid the first operating center. That's now grown into a really fabulous ministry of this community. We have a licensed social worker who now runs it, who takes care of all the screening and interviews. She's a gifted grant writer, so she's received some gifts, grants over the years. It provides not only rental assistance, utility assistance, but bus passes for those who need it. And because of Rosie's capabilities, she has referrals to almost anywhere in the city for people who need help that we can't give. So we're now touching the lives of far more people than just with financial things, financial matters. That would be one. As I came in this morning, I thought, the other one would be sitting out there in our parking lot, the old church bus. And I can use the word old because we should be getting a new one sometime next month. I think that's made a significant difference in the life of the congregation. I know it's been able to bring the Westminster folks. It's gone on one mission trip to New Orleans. A couple of times, I think, Craig, has it gone to Kings Island a couple of times? Yes? Once? Yes? Okay. And I hope the new one gets used again more because it's much quieter. So that's another thing. There were a couple others. Oh yes. I think in the recent past, the locking system of the church, which worked very smoothly, that changed over, that added to the security of the building, and the emergency policies and evacuation policies for the church that really protect not only the worshiping congregation, but also our church school in the event of disasters like tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, children missing, all kinds of things. There are now policies in place that will allow those to take place smoothly, we hope. I think I'm forgetting something that I don't see.
Over 40 years of ministry, and your involvement in many other churches, many pastoral situations, you've seen Presbyterian denomination change. Yeah. You've seen society change, the world change. What do you see as some of those changes, and then what are some of the challenges that you think this church faces over the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah. Part of that answer I would give, and I don't want it to sound like I'm making a judgment, but when I went into the ministry in the mid-70s, there were not as many women working outside of the home as there are now. And those ladies were the backbone of the volunteer source of the church. And I think that we, especially those who are younger than they, are truly indebted to them for their service and their volunteers, because that just is not the case right now. With so many more women working outside of the house, that volunteer force has greatly shrunk. And I think that the church as a whole has not done well adapting to that. The other thing that is different, and we were talking about this before the service, is in the early years of ministry, both in Milwaukee and in Illinois, the schools gave the churches Wednesday night. There were no school activities on Wednesday night. So we could do our youth activities and church programs and other things on Wednesday night without the fear that the school activities would interfere. And this, of course, was long, long before the days of traveling sports. I mean, if you were in a sports organization, it was either through the school or maybe through the Boys and Girls Club, which had the same policy. So we were free to minister to people in their competition. And the last thing that has really changed is technology, of course. When I went into the ministry, we had one lady who, Arlene, who used to handwrite out all the contributions every day, every Monday on these pads that were carbon paper with triplicate. I don't know if you can use carbon paper anymore. There were certainly no such things as computers. there were no such things as cell phone. I think that Gates and Jobs were somewhere wandering around California trying to figure out what they were going to invent, but nothing had really hit the market yet. And I think that that's one of the biggest factors of the church. The other factor that just came into my mind that I'll mention next Sunday is the legal system has changed. It used to be that churches were pretty much off base, safe from any kind of legal action, whether it was from a member within the church or whether it was from someone in the community who wanted to pursue take up litigation against the church. And that just is not the case anymore. Churches have to be much more careful about how they do things, how they relate to their community, even how they do things within their community. Those things have changed rapidly. And I think those two things have changed the most. I think the challenge of the church, will continue to be how to use technology wisely without cutting off those people of the older generation who still are not computer savvy. I think that will be a real challenge because I know for myself it's a tendency to use more modern technology because it is easier than the old-fashioned way of writing postcards and notes to remind people and that kind of jazz. It's easier to send out a bulk email. So I think that's one of the challenges of the churches. I think that when I entered the ministry, I don't really think there was a genre called contemporary Christian music. It just didn't exist. And I think music will continue to be an issue for the church and how it finds music that's appealing to different age groups, generations within the church, those who are familiar with traditional, as well as those who find contemporary music or contemporary Christian music more appealing. I think those will be the biggest challenges. And we've seen the effect of that in a lot of ways with the changing in the number and the size of many mainline Presbyterian churches where folks have gone to other places because the music and the style of worship is just different. And I think we'll continue to see that.
So what's this carbon paper stuff? Okay, we don't have a whole lot of time left. What are you going to miss? IPC.
I will miss all of you in a lot of different ways. The greetings that we do, the choir has sung to me for years and fed me spiritually for 26 years. The staff, which has been fabulous to work with, I will miss that tremendously. I will also miss getting up in the morning. Well, I probably will get up in the morning and still not know what I'm going to do. But it was just the running excitement of not knowing what I was going to do, but knowing there was going to be something exciting and different to do almost every day.
And here's a question that a lot of people have asked me. I don't know why they're asking me. What's Galen going to do in retirement?
Sleep. A lot of people wonder, I don't know if I would like go into an interim someplace. My answer is always, if I was going to do that, I wouldn't retire. That's work. I don't really have any clear plans for about the first 6 months or so. I think I'll maybe take some classes at Y. I may play with my photography, my cameras a little bit. I don't really have any real clear picture of what that will be. Although I do want to find some ways to do some mission work and some mentoring and some other things as time allows. And I guess I can say this. There's one thing I would like to do for the church after I retire. I just haven't had the time or energy to do it because it involves the Irvington Historical Society. And I would like to work to see if there's any way we can turn our beautiful patio into a columbarium, which is a place where cremains go, because I would much rather give my money to Irvington Presbyterian Church than to Flanders Buchanan. So that's one of the more concrete plans that I do have.
In a few minutes, we'll head out to Westminster and have this great luncheon. And I really encourage people to ask these kind of questions to Galen. When he retires, we will lose a lot of wisdom and history of this church, a lot of energy, a lot of creativity, and so, you know, Galen and I are going to meet on Tuesday, and he's going to sit down and tell me all the stuff that he does. And, you know, I think I know what he does, but I think he's going to give me this full long list of things that he does that I never knew about. And it terrifies me to even think about that. But those are the kind of things that I am so grateful for you doing. And next Sunday, Galen will be preaching to us his last sermon, and we can look forward to that. I do want to say also that as Galen and Susan will be retiring, Susan is still a member of this church and will continue to be a member of this church remote, and that though it may take some time, that there will be time later when we will hope to see them back as part of our worship after some time away. So, anything else you would like to say to us that you won't say next Sunday?
If I haven't said it before, Bob and I go to different conferences. And when one goes to a conference, the ministers get around and tell stories about their churches, what they're going through. And you can't believe some of the negative stories that ministers have to tell. And I thank God that I have never had a story like that to tell about Irvington Presbyterian Church. It's always been a wonderful place to work, a wonderful place to be involved in ministry, a wonderful place to experience our faith together. And I just thank God for the 26 years, because after going through the pushing and the shoving to find a job and a calling that kind of fit my skills and who I am, this was it. So thank you very much, all.